All right. Thank you. So we'll get started. I didn't have much to add to the agenda packet today. Our financial statements for November aren't out yet. We're hoping to get them done tomorrow. We're having this meeting really early this month because we typically only have one council meeting in December. I did run a few reports, sales tax for November, which are actually September numbers, was up 4%. So you'll see that come out. And this is just compared to last November. It's still up really high year to date, but compared to last November, it was up 4%. You might notice Diane is on the call today. We did have a decrease in our hotel motel tax compared to last November, which we haven't seen since January of 2021. So I asked Diane to be on the Zoom today so she could kind of talk a little bit about what was going on with the hotel motel tax and what we can expect hopefully in future months. So Diane, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It should be just really brief. So this September, the reporting, as Andy just mentioned, that we got is for September. The November numbers reflect September traffic and September financials, and our September traffic was down. So October 1, when I saw that our September traffic was down, I tried to ascertain why. I believe it's because last September, no one was in school still because of COVID. And this September, they were able to go back to school. So we missed a lot of tourism from that. But then October 1st, immediately I started running ads, digital ads along the I-5 corridor, and our October numbers are record high and our November numbers are record high for traffic. So what I would expect is that our LTAC numbers for October and November, as they get reported, will jump right back up to our expectations or even maybe a little bit higher. So I'm not concerned. I'll be concerned, in another month if LTAC doesn't reflect our numbers, but right now we're doing very well on traffic. So I'm assuming LTAC numbers will reflect it.
I'm just curious on the traffic numbers. I know that the transportation has a algorithm for discerning those numbers, but how much of that is, I saw November was extremely high, but with the amount of people that have moved in here and the construction traffic and all that, can they, I'm assuming we're not having 5 million visitors, but is there a way to discern the difference there?
It's what I say is I don't think that the traffic numbers are accurate, but we're comparing apples to apples from 2009 from when this started. So we are at least comparing, if the data is flawed, it's been flawed since the beginning. So at least our comparisons are pretty accurate. We have asked for and are getting, and Nick can speak to this a little bit further, we are moving hopefully January 1 to a digital traffic system. And it's my understanding that the digital traffic system will be able to tell which of those vehicles are commercial trucking vehicles, and be able to maybe make some assertions based on those and maybe have some more accurate reporting. I think the whole first year will just be a learning experience for us. And we, I don't know, Nick, maybe we keep both for now. I don't know how we want to do that so that we have some comparisons on how the old system works with the new. But I think we're going to have much better traffic data moving forward, and we need much more accurate traffic data. And we are one of the few cities that can have almost really accurate traffic data because there's one way in and one way out. So
right.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed by the numbers, and I think they're really good. It's just, there's a lot more people here. So, but the clam digs, I think, have a lot to do with that too.
I do too. I think clam digs, and that's what our advertising along the I-5 has been, are the clam digs.
I have just a quick question, sort of a follow-on to Eric's. Does the formula that Department of Transportation use factor in, like on a short cutty, it's the counters on both sides of the road, so you get the in and the out, I presume, and then even on Point Brown coming in, it's going to not only do the construction vehicles, but it also does anybody who lives here who went to even Hogan's Corner and comes back in. Is there a formula they use other than I think they assume like 2.3 people per vehicle or something like that.
They
Is there
do.
to take out, to impute how many people are actual residents or have left and come in on the same route?
The calculation assumes that about roughly 20% of the traffic is residents.
Okay. That seems low, doesn't it?
I don't know where they would have gotten that percentage. I don't know why they came up with that percentage. I wouldn't know. Yeah, I wouldn't know if they did a lot of studies and that was what they found. Those studies certainly couldn't have been based on our unique situation where there is only one way in and out. But again, I do want to say, even if it's flawed, it's been flawed since 2009. So we are comparing apples to apples. So our percentages of increases or decreases are accurate to the same
Right.
flood data.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
I know the subject got brought up last night at the city chat about a potential charge that the hotel motels assess to bring in more tourism promotion funding. And back in 2016, that was something that was on John Lynn's radar, was creating a tourism promotion area. And I sent some info to the mayor and Scott this morning on that because it caught my attention. It was actually brought up by one of the managers of one of the hotels in town. So if the hotels support it, which is what we would need to set this up, it's a possibility. The limit is $2. So that's the highest we could charge on that. But it's governed by RCW 35.101. If people wanted to take a look at that, it's just possibly a solution to that. It would bring in more revenue specifically for tourism promotion. So Diane, are you familiar with the TPAs at all or have any input on that?
I do know that Seaside does that. The hotels voluntarily added money so that they could do promotions. I also think that money doesn't have the same, and I hate to use the word restrictions, but we are supposed to use our LTAC money to advertise 50 miles outside the city to bring in tourism, where that $2 could be used for the things that the manager brought up last night, within the city without affecting the spirit of what LTAC is supposed to be collected for. But I do know Seaside did that. And I thought when we came back from Seaside that we had tossed that idea around and that we were at some kind of max tax on things and weren't allowed to do it. So it'd be great if we could.
Yeah, we'd have to look into it. It was just something that popped up on the radar. I think it requires a 60% majority of the hotels to sign a petition or something like that. So we would need support from them to do it. So anyway, it's something we could look into and look at if we are maxed out. That's obviously an issue, but something to think about.
Yeah, and I don't understand how the maxed out would affect tourists coming in anyway. So that at the time I wasn't this involved with the convention center as I am now. So I do remember there was something about reaching a limit and we weren't able to, it seemed like we weren't able to add that tax.
There is a limit on our sales tax, which is maxed out, but I don't know if this would fall under a sales tax because it's a set fee per night per hotel room. So I would have to contact Department of Revenue to figure that out. I'll write that down. Okay. Anything else on financial statements, LTAC, TPA?
Angie,
Sure.
Angie, one thing that I would like to, and you probably have the access, but since we just got done, our businesses just got done paying the B&O tax quarterlies, do we have numbers where we can compare just the B&O tax?
Yep, those will be in the financial statements when they come out. So yeah, we can do a year-to-date analysis on where we are versus last year or whatever years you're interested in.
Yeah, because I think that would be good to do, and I know I'm hopefully that Diane, that your numbers are right of the increase transactions. I just know from my businesses that we're comping against a really strong year, the year before. If I go and run my numbers against that, we're I think 35% up over last year, or 2 years before. And then we're running about 5% up over prior year. So I think to your assumption that school not being in session makes a big difference. And I think also, at least for what I'm hearing from other businesses, I think a lot of the conversation is that you just have a lot more options of places to go versus, the prior 2 years. And I think that's just is impacting us with it. So.
Yep, I can run a little trend. I usually do 5-6 years. I can run one of those real easy.
Well, because I'm just thinking on the B&O tax would be good, because that is just not sales. I mean, it's all businesses, and just to see the health of the businesses, whether or not we're doing better or worse.
Yep.
And because we haven't really changed any of our fees or anything on that, it should be a pretty consistent number.
All right. I think we're ready for Nick for storm rate.
Well, yeah, there's actually 2 items relating to my world that are going to address finances in the upcoming council meeting. So the first is the stormwater rate amendment. We had talked about that at the last council meeting. The framework was, pretty straightforward. We were being consistent with the dollar target that we were shooting for. That was consistent with the mid-biennial budget modification, and so we made sure that everything lined up there. There were no recommendations to revise that, and so that has been carried forward in its current status. At this point in time. And so no significant changes there, nothing, no surprises, nothing along those lines. Before we move on to the other topic, is there any, questions as it relates to stormwater? No. Okay. So the secondary item is the BRIC application, and that is a water related item. We had the opportunity, actually a couple of years ago, or for the past few years, we have been trying to figure out how to seismically retrofit our 3 million gallon reservoir at the water treatment plant. And just for edification, our 3 million gallon reservoir at the treatment plant is half of our total system storage. And so it makes sense that that's the place to start, any seismic resiliency targets for our water system. The purpose behind a project like this is in the event of an earthquake, the key piece is most of our distribution system is, brittle AC, piping. And when we have, ground modifications, a lot of that piping will break. And so the principal focus is to make sure that we have the ability to provide drinking water for our community in the event that we have some seismic activity. And that's what this project is intended to do. We had talked about this in conjunction with our seal welding and recoating of that structure. And so we have been reserving money off to the side in our capital replacement fund to facilitate that work in itself. And so we actually had planned on budgeting our recoating and seal welding project this year, but we wanted to make sure that it aligned with this seismic retrofitting project. And so this is something that, again, I know FEMA, State EMB and FEMA are aware of our need to, be resilient on the coast. In the event of a major event, we are going to be kind of the last, served by, disaster response. And so any efforts that we can take on our end to be more resilient, provide water for our community, it translates to success in the event of an emergency. So from an economic standpoint, this is a $600,000 grant and a $200,000 match by the city. We have the capital that is available in our capital replacement fund. And again, all of this was intended to be in conjunction with that prior plan project. So we're hoping that there's some movement on FEMA's end, and the request at this upcoming council is just to designate who is going to be signing the application on behalf of the city. And so we've got Scott Anderson and Sarah Bisson that are the intended applicant agents. So relatively straightforward, but I wanted to provide a little bit of context for everybody just so that you understood what was going on and where we were intending to go. Any thoughts, concerns, questions, comments?
Just a suggestion, because we will get questions. I just browsed online. I haven't picked up my packet yet, but I think it's important when you present that you emphasize that the money for the match is already in the water capital fund. We've been putting it aside. And this is sort of a gift to us to let us go forward now, rather than to have to wait until we have all the money accumulated. So I think that would be important. If we get this, it will be sort of a gift. And is this part of the infrastructure bill that Congress just signed, or this is something else, isn't it? And it's not ARPA either, right?
No, this is disaster mitigation dollars.
Okay, so just as a question, can we use ARPA funds for the match? Probably not, because it's federal, right?
You generally can't match federal with federal.
Okay. Just looking for ways to save money.
Now, what we might be able to do without complicating the issue is utilize some of that money for the recoding and seal welding, which is a different segment of the project. So you're not necessarily matching federal with federal, but there's a $1.8 million project with city dollars that we had planned on funding completely. And so if there's a way to generate some grant-based funding or along those lines, it provides us a little bit of flexibility to kind of move things around.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Nick. On to the budget. So we have our third reading of the budget amendment coming up on Monday. The two changes that council requested at the last meeting were the addition of $30,000 for the EMS staffing and rate study. So that was added, as well as adding a firefighter paramedic position. I've been getting some feedback that a little bit of the hesitancy on approving the budget is due to not necessarily the storm rate that we're recommending, but the position that's in the budget, the environmental specialist position. So in an effort to get this budget passed, I think what I'm going to do is just recommend that council can amend that to take that position out at this time. What would happen is the money would just sit in the fund balance. So instead of ending with $250,000 in the storm fund, we would end with $400,000 in the storm fund. And what we could do is just revisit that staffing issue first quarter of 2022. Hopefully we'll have a new public works director in by then. We'll have a better plan on what's going on. But council can still make adjustments and approve the budget at this upcoming meeting. So if that's the reason the budget's being held up, I'm just going to recommend that we just take it out and revisit it later on next year. So any questions, thoughts, ideas on that?
Yeah, this is Eric. I fully understand the pushback, and I'm okay with that. I just think when we're obviously you are getting pushback, and I understand that, but the Fresh Waterways did their whole thing, and they're the ones who are asking for this, and we're supporting it. So I get the issue, and I agree that, you know, if that's what it takes to pass it, we can do that. I don't like it because, again, stormwater, you know, fresh waterways specifically asked for this position, and it makes sense, but I get it.
Yeah, I will be making a note for our first quarter budget amendment next year if that does get removed, to bring it back up, because it is important. It's something that needs to be addressed. The citizens are asking for the waterways to be cleaned up. So I'm not going to let it fall off the radar, but we need to get this budget approved at this point. That's priority one. We need to get these funds fixed. And we can come back to that later on if we need to. So I think that's a good.
Yeah, I agree. I've got a whole lot more comments pro the position than I've heard very few against it, but I do know there's a vocal group out there against it. So I'll support it.
I'm kind of with Eric, although I've heard the opposite. Most people are saying, how can you hire somebody in a department when you don't have a department to manage and you don't have a plan? Why don't you hire crew members instead, which you could hire more crew members than what it sounds like this position, the cost of this position. The other thing is, I keep hearing, well, how hard is it to dip a beaker into the water in 5 different places to send it away to test? That's what I'm hearing. I don't think they object to adding a person, but even during the Fresh Waterways conversations that I listened to on Zoom after I listened to the recordings, there was some disagreement in the position as it would be formulated. So everybody agrees we need something, but they weren't agreeing in what kind of position it was. So I think it would be prudent to let a new person come in, get their feet wet a little bit, bring this back at the first of the year. After we get this budget passed, I think we would have a lot easier time getting the budget passed if we remove that position, even though we know down the road we need something. And that could be crew to go out and cut the trees or whatever. It could be dedicated. Can I ask a question about the stormwater? This is something that John, you mentioned last night. Have we, I know I asked in my budget request to create a separate line for the fresh waterways in 438. Have we, you mentioned that we did that. Has that been, I haven't seen it, but is that something you've done, Angie?
Yeah, there is a separate item in Fund 438 for the waterways.
And, sorry, go ahead.
Going into next budget cycle, we can do a whole department. We can, again, it's just, we can make whatever changes, but without knowing what the plan is at this point, or having a new public works director, you know, it's kind of premature, I think, to overhaul everything until we have a solid plan on what's going on.
Kim, what is the possibility of, the other thing I had asked is to create a capital fund for dedicated to stormwater like we have for water and sewer. Is that a possibility? Because that would be, it seems to me, where the money for cleanup of OIHUT would go, right? That 200,000?
Yeah, so what we would do is during the next budget cycle, this is when we need to talk about all this stuff, and we would just build whatever we need into the 2023, 2024 budget. So hopefully we'll have a person and staffing and a plan together to help guide us on what they want that to look like. I know I definitely want to put a line item in the new budget specifically for the Fresh Waterways Corporation, so that they know how much money they have to spend and what's being spent. So there's all kinds of ideas out there, and we can do whatever we want to the budget, but without knowing the staffing and who's going to be running things and what we need, it's kind of hard to do that right now.
Okay, so it's not there yet. You're thinking of the next biennial budget, not 2022.
Yeah, because I don't have any real direction right now on what to put in there. We do have a separate line
Oh,
that we created separate line items in this budget amendment for the Oyhut Bay or the Oyhut project, the culvert. So that's separated. So specific line items that we have a plan for are definitely in there. But to overhaul the whole funds budget at this point, I just don't have enough info yet. So we'll get there though.
okay, thank you.
Anything else on budget? Sorry, that was a half yawn there. I'm ready to be done with the budget. Can you tell?
Yeah.
All right, we're ready for Sarah's grant update, and I think Sarah has a screen share for us of the big master spreadsheet.
Good morning, Finance Committee. This is, a huge update and not a lot has changed. So I've just highlighted some areas for changes. And really, Sarah, if you just want to stay to the left of the screen right here, perfect. I can kind of discuss what my notes are on the right. And if you have time to review it at a later time, that's fine. The first line, Airport Improvement Program 2018, this is currently being closed out. This is for the environmental assessment for obstruction removal. It's in the active list though, because we have to go through the entire closeout process, submit final report, receive final reimbursement. So it's still active at this time. Assistance to Firefighters 2018, awarded in 2019. They have a little bit of funds. This is for the power load COTS. They have a little bit of funds remaining, about $1,500 to expend by March of this upcoming year. So it's just something to keep an eye on. They are well aware that they need to spend it. It was funds remaining from the project. And as we move forward, those excess funds can be used for a high priority need. So PPE, accessories for the COTS, even accessories for the ambulance. We're allowed to spend up to 10% of excess funds, $10,000 of excess funds. So we're looking at about $1,500. And then moving down, nothing has really changed in regard to these grants in light blue. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind scrolling to the yellow section, these are new grants. Everything else has been presented to council. That's arranged by fiscal year. The first in yellow was the CTP risk mapping, which addresses an erosion study along Marine View Drive. And 2021 COVID-19 DR 4481 public assistance. This reimbursed us for costs of meal service, the first 30 days of meal service. That was approved by council. So as it's approved by council, I move it from a pending to the active section. So these are the changes that you've seen from last quarter. 2021 Local Records Grant Program for records management. This was awarded to Sarah's office and is supplementing temporary employee salary, and 2021 Bulletproof Vest Program. Those are all new awards within this last quarter. If you continue to scroll down, and nothing has changed in the inactive section. Legislative appropriations, nothing has changed. And when we get down to the pending, you'll notice there are 3 areas that say approved. The first one, 2021 DR 4539, 2020 public assistance. This has to do with the storm from last year, and we are wrapping up final grant paperwork. We received notice of this award just prior to agenda setting. I didn't have time to get it on this agenda, so it will go on the next council agenda for approval. Then DR 4593, this is for 2021 storms, and Nick and I are working through documentation to the funding agency. 2021 approved ARPA WA State Library Grant. This is an ARPA grant for library for remote services and connectivity, just to reach people who can't necessarily make it to the library during the pandemic and make a library access a little bit easier. This will go before council at this next meeting on the 13th. 2022 FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance. This is, we applied for 2 separate funds for the same project because it was allowable for both, and that's water storage seismic retrofitting. So the line directly underneath, FEMA Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, and the one above it, FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance 2022, those are both for that. But we are in the process of moving forward on that BRIC. That's the acronym for the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, on a $1 million project for that water seismic retrofitting, water storage seismic retrofitting. That's a mouthful. And Nick is working Nick and Robert have been working directly with a consultant to assist with that because there's a lot of technical pieces that need to be in place. I'm assisting in any way that I can, working through the grant system, and that is due on January 3rd. I believe the consultant is anticipating on having their portion complete by the 17th of this month. The last line in the pending section is for Transportation Improvement Board Point Brown crosswalk. This is for a crosswalk between Chance Alamere and Shoal Street on Point Brown. This has been an approved award, but it needs to go before council, and that will also appear on the agenda on December 13th. As far as upcoming projects go, these are things that I keep my eye out for. I've been tipped off to, nothing has really changed on here except for the shoreline planning grant. We have an opportunity for $16,000 coming on board by March 2022. It's an allocation specifically identified for the city to assist in an update. And so we'll be working with Public Works and planning on that piece. Moving forward down, this is the last section of the updated grant list. And I wanted to include these because it's important to notice the denied grants. 2021 staffing for adequate firefighting and response. That's the SAFER grant where we requested 3 firefighters. It's unfortunate we were denied. We were awarded through another pot of funding for a new ambulance, but unfortunately our SAFER grant did not make it through all the way to funding. And when I asked for notes, I was told that there were too many applications and they did not provide notes on why we were kicked out and not funded. Joe and I were very disappointed actually because we thought we had put together a great grant. You know, we're talking about the increased ISO rating and the need for the 3 firefighters. Unfortunately, the funding agency did not pick that up. The second line underneath the denied section is Assistance to Firefighters 2020. We were awarded for the ambulance, but we were not awarded for our second request under this funding, which was for hoses, nozzles, and valves. And Joe Hoffman and I were aware that could potentially happen because they had not all come to expiration or through the retention schedule. We actually requested them 1 year prior. And just a current update, I am working on an AFG grant right now for a new SCBA compressor. I know we discussed it at the department head meeting. That's due on December 17th. So those are the updates that I have for you. It's a lot of information if we were to go line by line, but you can certainly review it. And you know, if you have any questions, let Sarah know. I can forward her a response, or let Scott know, and I can provide further information on any of those.
Can I ask
Do you
just
have
a
any questions?
couple overall
Oh,
questions,
sure.
Sarah? You mentioned the DR 4539 that didn't make it to the agenda this time and you wanted to bring it back at the next meeting. which likely won't be until January, is there going to be a problem with us approving the grant if we wait that long? Is there a deadline on
I
it?
don't believe so. No, I do not believe so.
Okay, if there is, if you would go back and check, I'm quite sure that we could do an agenda, an addition to the consent agenda, because we certainly don't want to let that pass by. My second question is on the pending. I don't remember in the last spreadsheet you provided a city building solar power. I may have missed it, but is that a new one?
I think that might be under upcoming projects.
Yes.
And it's just as grant opportunities are forwarded to me. This was forwarded to me by Mayor Dingler, and she wanted to kind of investigate it a little bit further to see if it's something we could potentially do. So I put it on the upcoming projects list because it may be something that the city would like to move forward in the future with, but it is not imperative, and there is a lot of steps that need to be in place in order for us to get there. So I just thought I'd put it on there because it was brought up to me a few months ago by Mayor Dingler, but it may not be a high priority for the council. It was just an earmark because that opportunity was forwarded on to me to further investigate.
Well, I'm glad it's there. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for going more green than we have been, and I certainly and was happy to see it. I just don't remember seeing it before. I'm wondering, my next question is on, we always hear about the shovel-ready projects, and with the new funding on the infrastructure bill, I've been thinking about bridges. I've been thinking about maybe some larger things with those pots of money that I assume are going to be like a grant to the state. Do we know how the state is going to disperse that? And do we have some planning for these shovel, talk about something hard to say, shovel-ready projects?
So I haven't seen any guidance as of yet, but I certainly have my ear to the pavement in regard to that. As far as shovel-ready projects, I have not been made aware of, what Public Works is prioritizing at this time, aside from, retrofits and things like that. So it could be a discussion that we could schedule moving forward. So that way, we're up and ready once that funding becomes available from the state. And it's a great idea. I've suggested several times that potentially the city should consider a capital improvement list, maybe items 1 through 25, saying this is what we hope to see over the next 5 to 10 years. These are our priorities, because I may not be able to find funding for number 1, but I may be able to find funding for number 25. So it would behoove us to kind of plan for that in the future. And I know we have the comprehensive plan and whatnot, but really that is aside from a capital improvement plan.
Yeah, and we do have that. Nick provides us with the sort of pending projects, but I wonder, it seems like there's a certain amount of upfront work that I would interpret would be necessary for a shovel-ready project, at least have some sort of an idea on cost. And my last question is, and this is for Sarah Logan, is it possible, again, I always ask this, the 11 by 17 printout of that for all of the council members to just throw in our boxes? Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Any more questions for Sarah? Okay. I just have a quick couple updates on the ambulance utility cost of service and rate study. Our contract with our consultant is signed. We made it right under the $30,000 mark And we should be expecting that final report end of March, early April. So that is in process. John did mention that at our city chat last night. So that information has been put out to the public. ARPA, Utility Assistance Program. We are so close to getting that up and running. We are waiting on CAP to sign the contract. What will happen with that is customers will apply with CAP. CAP will vet the applications. They will award any amount that they deem fit based on the criteria that is consistent with what the PUD is using and what CAP's using. And then if awarded, they will send a check to the city and we will apply those checks to customer accounts. And then we will be invoiced by CAP to pay that cost. So that is so close. We did prepare, actually we didn't prepare a flyer. We used the flyer that everybody else is using, PUD CAP, and basically added our logo to the bottom. And we're going to be sending that out in the next rounds of utility bills. So customers will get copies of that, and we'll be able to post them everywhere as well. So we're really excited to get that going. CAP has been awarding quite a bit of funding outside of our ARPA already. So we've been seeing a lot of those accounts paid off. So I think it's a process that's working. We just need to get the word out that it's available for our citizens to use. So the more we can share that, the better, and get them to start talking to CAP sooner rather than later, with shutoffs resuming in January. So any questions on that?
I just have a quick one. Do you have when will we see the latest utility billing aging report?
Around the 20th.
Okay.
The auto pays go out.
Numbers go down, right?
Yeah. Yep. We're cleaning up quite a few. So it's been nice. Okay. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Scott for his update.
Well, hello there, everyone. So we got just a whole host of things that are going on behind the scenes, and then things that are in public. And I'm glad my public works director is on to supplement some of the information I'm about to give. Yesterday, we began the final process of our negotiations with Fire District 7, which is going to give us an increase when we have calls that we have to service in District 7. We've kind of come down to a general framework with the fire commissioners from District 7 and ourselves, and it will be raising our rates to around $450. But before that goes through, obviously I'll be sending that to John, but that's just the negotiations we've been having with them for some time. And we will also in May attempt to reopen negotiations with the casino to renegotiate our rates, because our rates have been traditionally very low in responding to the Quinault's calls. And we need to look at what would make more sense for us for that. But that process won't happen in May, because it can only happen when the tribe reopens its contract. I've also been working on contracts with Honey Pearl Ranch, because that's an annual contract, and Charles Morgan's asked for some revisions. I've taken those to the WCIA, and I'm running those by Brent. So we should have like a semifinal draft ready on that. And in addition, this is the time of year where we start the contract with the CIC and their revisions. So I'll be working with Nancy Eldridge to at least get a first draft of that in place. And then of course they always will bring their report to council in January after they run their financials. So council will hear from that. In addition, the High Dunes, just some of the big public works projects, the High Dunes Trail, just so we all know where we are for that. We've executed the professional services agreement. The team is going to start work on the right-of-way phase. That'll be Gray and Osborne. And that they have to finish by June 2022, because that's when we are scheduled to start construction on the High Dunes Trail. So that will finally kick off this summer. I'll throw it over to Nick if he has any other comments to make on that one before I move on. Nope, we're good. Fire break, likewise, starting phase 2, which actually I don't even know if we call it phase 2 anymore, because there's no phase 3, but I guess after 1, 2 does make sense, numerically speaking. But this is different. Originally, we talked about doing it in 3 different phases. We're only going to do it in 2. This will allow for clearing all the way from the Best Western down to the Polynesian. And it will be done. A lot of it's going to be done over the course of the summer. So our hotels won't be entirely thrilled, but we cannot operate in the wetlands during the winter months. It's simply impossible because a lot of that vegetation has to be hand removed. But that will get us to a point where, after 20 years of hotels talking about the fire break, we will actually have a full functioning fire break that will be in place all the way from the Best Western to the Polynesian. So I'm really glad that that's happening and that's moving forward. Other things, the tsunami tower, we're gonna have a longer conversation about that on Monday. But we are at the next step of executing the design contract, and Nick will be bringing that to council. We'll be discussing that more generally. The other thing that, Nick, maybe you want to elaborate a little more on this is that because the project purpose for our vegetation clearance that council has given us the money for between State Route 115 on the Grand Canal and the Oyhut Ditch. We're in the process of selecting a professional services person from our roster. But Nick, why don't you chime in on where we are exactly in that right now?
That's exactly what we're doing is we're reaching out to, professional services companies so that we can initiate, both the design and permitting phase for addressing vegetation removal of that corridor. That would be the first step in, going through the Oyhut Ditch process, maintenance, efforts. Once we remove the vegetation, then we're going to at least have a better understanding of, visually we'll be able to see where the culverts are at and if we need to make any adjustments to those culverts. So, it just seemed like it was a logical approach to, rather try to, you don't eat the elephant all at once. And so this is one bite at a time. So.
And then the last thing that I have is the city is really, now we're moving forward on the abatement process. We're abating the property at 770 Rain Street. This is things that we're moving quickly on. We hope to have a fence up on tomorrow around that property. I went out and took some photos of the property yesterday. It's a mess. There's work that needs to be done in that neighborhood, but we're taking it one step at a time. And I'm glad we're finally moving forward on getting this property fenced off. And that's really all for me for now. Unless John had questions. John looks like he has a question.
Oh, no, it's just to your point, we're extremely busy. We've got a lot of stuff that is behind the scenes that we haven't started on, but we're going to start very quickly on. So I appreciate it, and especially on the fire break. And, to be clear that part of that phase 2 is also the maintenance of phase 1. So, and we'll have a plan. So no, I appreciate all the work that you're doing.
I just have a quick comment question, heads up. There probably is a phase 3 that you're going to hear about on that fire break, and it's from the Poly south on along like sand dune, because there's a lot of concern in that area as well. So, and I know that I hear a lot about it on occasion when I've been out and visited with people. So I would consider that a phase 3.
That's gonna be a whole nother discussion because we haven't budgeted that. We haven't looked at that. We haven't done any of the wetlands preliminary reports that we need to do it. It doesn't mean it doesn't need to be done, but the whole idea was, for 20 years, we've been talking about, let's get a fire break behind the hotels. And it sat and we're getting it done. So whether we have to continue that farther south, we may need to do that. It certainly might make sense, but it'll be, I don't know if we want to call it phase 3 or how we want to call it, but we'll have to have that discussion.
Thanks.
All right, Mary, you ready?
I'm ready. So I'm going to need help from the finance committee as well as Angie, because as stepping in as being mayor, looking at a lot of the needs of the city, there's some expensive projects that we're looking at. And adding firefighters, a big one, police station, a big one, South Fire Station, not as big, but it's there. And so there's just going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to have to make some difficult decisions of what we want to do. Either we move forward, we raise rates on things. And I think the important part of this whole thing is getting the citizens to be involved and do education of how things are broken down. I think there's still lack of, people are confused about where the different pots of money come from and how come we can't move it from one place to the other. And I think it's going to be important as the new council is seated and we start looking at what our priorities are, that we probably use the city chats, to get finance out there and talk about, what rate study means, what a person made a really good question yesterday or last night about, we've got all this building, so we have new people, so property values have come up. Then why would we have to look at finding some additional funding sources? So I think those are the things we just need to put on our plate, and maybe have the finance committee go out and do some conversations and listening to the citizens, so everyone understands, what the options are. And especially I think especially if as we're moving forward on any big projects, that we are as transparent as possible of, what the cost is going to be, and why the costs are going to be what they are. Because like, instance, like the South Fire Station, we can't just buy a commercial trailer and park down there and call it good. I mean, there's going to be certain requirements that we have to follow from the state to be able to do that. And it's stuff that we've done before, but I don't think that we've actually done a really good job as far as just communicating it beyond it. So if you have ideas of how that we can better communicate the information out there, I'm wide open to do that, because there's just some big projects that we're looking for, and I just want to have probably the majority of the citizens on board of whatever it's going to be. And that's easy to say, but more difficult to do, because there's always whatever we're going to do, there's going to be people that aren't going to be in favor of it. But I just want to make sure that everyone knows what we're doing. And Angie, you're going to be a big part of that communication piece with it, because like one of the things that is the big question right now is, which we're going to meet with Andy tomorrow, but what impact of the school levy is going to have on our ability to ask for it, and then what happens, like, if the school levy doesn't pass, because that's the big question, because obviously the conversation with the tsunami, and we didn't do the city and the school district has not done a very good job of communicating what each is doing. So, and then we just got a lot of stuff going on, and we're moving really fast, and hopefully we can just get things happening, and every day, when I see Nick, I'm just sad that Nick's leaving us, because I'm just thinking, okay, what's the future? But I'm hoping that everything works out. So I'm open for any questions you guys have or comments.
Yeah. Hey, John, I like your idea of, this is Eric, getting the finance committee involved so that you don't have to do everything. I think like you did with your city chats, maybe starting next year with some of this stuff when it's more detailed out, so that we have all the information when it comes to, the South Fire Station, the police station, and what that might cost and things like that, that we as the finance committee, maybe, two of us or whatever, could do the same thing you're doing, like a city chats that's very focused just on that one issue, and invite as many people, and whether it's at the Lions Club or Convention Center, and ask, as many questions. I think the more opportunities that we have to do that, and get the information out, and it's very focused just on, the South Fire Station or the police station, or, the rate study, and what that all means, and how much it's going to cost, and where it's all going to come from. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that way you don't have to do it all by yourself.
I appreciate it.
All right. On that note, I wanted to, we have a new year starting and obviously we're working on 2022 committee assignments. We typically take a break from finance committee in January so we can get all that worked out and get a calendar out. So people have a lot of time to plan to get things on their calendars. So Nick, I don't know what's going on with your public works committee. Are you in the same boat with that or what your plan is?
I think we're probably going to end up canceling the meeting next week, due to the holidays being right around the corner. And then we'll see kind of how January unfolds, because I actually won't be here for the first meeting in January. So that's probably the same path as the finance committee.
Okay. And we'll be talking quite a bit with the mayor to get people on those assignments and try to fit people with their interests and to make it beneficial. I know the mayor has some good ideas for some more robust committee reports at council meetings and stuff like that. So that's something we'll be working on, but I still do need my warrant signers. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So Catherine, that's you. So you're not off the hook for that yet.
No worries. I'll be
Yeah.
there.
All right, that's the one I kind of need to keep going in this interim period where we're figuring out we're seating a new council and we just have a lot of stuff going on in January. So by February, we should have all that stuff worked out and the schedule out to people. So anything else? All right, another good meeting. I appreciate everybody's time.
All right.
Everybody's busy.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Angie.
Thank you, everyone.